It's a common misconception that Europeans gave us Black History Month. In actuality, it spawned from Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He was a visionary who believed history should be used as a source of motivation and a weapon against misinformation and the intellectual warfare against Black people in the diaspora. So he began developing the concept of Black History Week. Yes, that's where it started. And this concept came to life in February of 1926 and later turned into Black History Month. He chose the month of February because this is the month Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln was born. He acknowledged Lincoln for signing the Emancipation Proclamation, and naturally he believed Frederick Douglass was an example of determination for all Black people. Woodson was a dedicated scholar, a passionate writer whose pen stayed in constant motion, who was constantly teaching and documenting, all for the advancement of Black people. Dr. Woodson was the founder and publisher of the Journal of Negro History. He was a regular columnist for Marcus Garvey's weekly journal, Negro World. In 1915, he founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. In 1920, he founded the oldest operating African American book publishing company, Associated Publishers. And he wrote over 20 books. And his most famous work was The Miseducation of the Negro, which was written in 1933. Many Black scholars find this prolific book even more relevant in today's day and time. But just as important as who fought for Black history is why.
First, you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally, it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself.
Dr. Woodson, having obtained his PhD from Harvard and being a professor at Howard University, saw firsthand how African American contributions were constantly overlooked, ignored, and suppressed by the writers of the textbooks and the teachers. And with Woodson coming from the world of academia, he was also very critical of how the institution of higher learning dealt with Black people. He believed they were pushing out educated servants that were thoroughly indoctrinated, not people who would return to their community and knew how to create their own. But instead, producing individuals that would depend on the same people that subjugated them. Dr. Woodson spent his life motivating Black people with their history. His last work was the Encyclopedia Africana. It would have been a 6-volume work, but on April 3rd, 1950, at the age of 74, Dr. Woodson was laid to rest before it could be finished. Black History Month was never intended for us to restrict the learning of our history to February only. It was simply a way to collectively wake up our consciousness from what we were not being taught. Dr. Woodson understood that we could not rely on any institution or any other race to teach us about us, which is why he devoted his life to writing our history for you. And for that reason, this great ancestor, we honor. I asked a group of youth a simple question. Tell me about your history. Many of the youth spoke about the Civil Rights era with Dr. Martin Luther King. And an overwhelmingly majority spoke about slavery. Only when you understand the greatness of your civilization prior to European colonialism that things will become crystal clear. Only when you understand the civilization that you come from, the civilization that was interrupted, will you understand what your ancestors and the great warriors of your race fought for in America, Africa, South America, the Caribbeans, all throughout the African diaspora. And for that reason, I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorite history teachers, Home Team History, another YouTuber with a wonderful channel that focuses mainly on pre-colonial history. Home Team, tell me why you think it's important for us to know pre-colonial history.
As Afro-descendant people have been told on numerous occasions that we come from a dark continent with a dark history, and anything that we've ever achieved has been supervised or accompanied by other people. Now, the crime was not us being told this. The crime was actually us believing it. Many of us even avoid association with Africa because of these fallacies promoted by other people. And so many of us actually believe our history begins with slavery and ends with Martin Luther King. In a way, we've become conditioned to not believe in our own agency as Afro-descendant people. And because we don't believe in our own agency, we champion the goods and services of other people and even accommodate their needs and their concerns above our own, willingly surrendering our dignity and pieces of our humanity for approval or validation. Because apparently we can't even imagine our own advancement without them. This is why on my channel I highlight and discuss the agency of African people that's been exhibited not only on the African continent but the world. African empires, mythology, and especially African kings and queens. I explain things from a proper historical perspective, and it's important that we as Afro-descendant people value what we create and value our own history.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. From the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. March on to victory, march on to victory, march on till victory is won.
the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with Jesus been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the Zion. Now from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white beam of our bright star is fast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy mind led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest thou flee straight from the places of God when we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chase we run, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat and on our weary feet, come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with Jesus
like a drop of rain in an ocean, like a drop in the sea. But many, many nations still got to learn from we, how we aspire and we achieve. It's so hard to believe the unity that is so unique. It's fantastic, yes, so to speak. It's fantastic, yes, it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation, it's second to none. Here the Negroes, the white man, the Chinese, the Indian, we walk together in hand. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of Stevens. Invent a bomb or on the moon ever land a man. Our population isn't yet a million, so then that is no disgrace for Trinidadians of steady pace and through every color, creed and race in this world could find an equal place. So you see, it's fantastic, yes it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation, it's second to none. Yeah, the Negroes, the white man, the Chinese, their children, they play together in the sun. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of Stevens. All I can say is I am so proud, and I'm going to sing it out clear and loud. Yes, I'm proud of my people, each and every one of you, for contributing to humanity, and contented beings we always will be. Whenever the stories are said, how Trinidadian lived, what the world thought was dead. So you see, it's fantastic, yes it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation is second to none. Here the Negroes, the white man, the Chinese,